Welcome back to another episode of DEC Does What? I'm Sean Mahar along with
Erica Ringwald.
And today is our hunting episode.
Woohoo!
This is going to be pretty awesome. We have a great conversation with two of our fish and wildlife experts, Brendan Quirion and Tim Pheasants, who are going to take us away on what it is that we do here to really help energize and inspire the next generation of responsible hunters in the state. And Erica, I know your son is actually a budding hunter himself. Is that right?
He is, and he'll be getting outside this weekend.
That's great. And I know hunting seasons are starting to open in the state, which is why we wanted to bring you this great episode today. And Tim and Brendan, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So before we get into hunting and stuff, what do you guys do for DEC? I know my daughter actually asked me, she's like, what is your day like? But what do you two actually do for the department, and why is it so important?
So I'm a wildlife biologist and regional wildlife biologist. And most regional wildlife biologists, we have a couple different program areas that we specialize in. For me, it's hunter education. Hunter education has a whole bank of volunteer instructors that teach hunter education to all the people in New York State who are interested in going hunting. And the other part of that is for bird management. So any studies or research that we're doing on species such as river otter, mink, muskrat, beaver, I get my hands in.
That sounds fun. And Brendan, what about you?
So I'm the big game biologist for DEC here in central office. So I really oversee all aspects of our deer and bear management programs. And that can be setting season lengths, the number of tags available to hunters throughout the hunting season, education and outreach. I do a lot of communications work through our communications team. Each day varies, which keeps things exciting. But if it's deer or bear related, I'm usually the one handling it.
Awesome. And we've definitely had some bear encounters recently. It was a very active summer for that. Human-bear interactions, we'll get into that in a little bit. But I think first and foremost, we have 565,000 hunters in New York State, licensed hunters, and they contribute about $2.6 billion to the state economy. This is such a huge outdoor recreation for the state and critical for us to really help foster in the future. And you two are some of the people who are helping the work do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some of the ways in which you try and recruit the next generation of hunters here in the state?
One thing that I got to talk about that is kind of unfolding and that we're working on. So we have our traditional hunter education classes that folks have to go to before they go afield hunting. But the other part of that is that we're starting to develop these Hunt Fish New York classes, which they're going to be shorter classes that are to a specific topic under the umbrella of hunter education. So as an example, like through our traditional hunter course, we touch on the basics, but maybe we don't specifically talk about how to go bow hunting or how to set up your decoys for duck hunting. And these Hunt Fish New York classes could be very specific to those topics and help new hunters who maybe don't have any mentors learn these things from firsthand instructors who have that experience. So that's really exciting. It's just at the infancy stages, but it's going, and we're looking forward to that in the future.
Well, sign me up, because I'm one of those new hunters who is new to it. I always wanted to be, but didn't come from a family that was a hunting family, so I didn't have those mentors along the way. And obviously now, as I've come to DEC and branched off and met a lot of folks who actually I didn't even know were hunters, but we've been friends for a while. It's been fun to, hear from their experiences and learn from them in the field. So, kudos to, you developing this program, which is really going to be critical. But yeah, please do sign me up, because I'd like to take part in it if I could.
Yeah, no doubt.
And from our standpoint, it's really about removing the barriers that would prevent a youth from getting involved in hunting. So for example, we have a special youth hunt opportunity coming up over Columbus Day weekend, where youth, under the supervision of an experienced and knowledgeable adult mentor, can really get a firsthand look into what big game hunting is, experience it, and hopefully that sparks a lifelong interest in conservation and wildlife management, and they'll be that hunter that we need in our ranks 20, 30 years down the road.
So if I'm a new hunter in the state, what do I need to know, and what are the steps I have to take in order to become a hunter and get out in the field and go hunting?
Yeah, probably the first thing is to sign up for a hunter education class. Because like I said before, you have to have that before you go hunting a field or before you buy a hunting license. And in New York, you could go to an in-person class, or we do have an all-online class. So folks that have busy schedules, or they just, kids have tons of sports, involved in a lot of different things. You don't have to take the all-online class at one time, but you could do it over a week or over a month and get that done. But I certainly support our volunteer instructors who are offering our in-person classes, because the value that a student gets at going to that in-person class is next to nothing. Like it's great. Lots of experience, hands-on experience. We provide a lot of equipment for those instructors to get that message across, which is being safe, ethical, and involved hunters.
And hunting is pretty safe in the state, right, Erica? We've got some good metrics on just how safe hunting has been in the state overall.
And increasingly so, right? I know in the 1960s, there were, around 100 hunting-related sort of shooting incidents a year, and we've got that down to, a couple?
The 5-year average is just over 10.
Okay. So while we've seen a decline in the accidental hunting-related shooting incidents, there has been an uptick, I think, in tree stand accidents. Is that right?
So it's something that we've just really started to keep track of, and there's certainly incidents, and people are, having minor incidents, falling out of tree stands, and people are succumbing to some of those too. So it's very important. One of the reasons why we track those is that we could try to identify what are the main factors of people falling out of tree stands, and then in our hunter education classes, promote that stuff or get that word out. But it is statistics across the country. It is pretty evident that the majority of falls are people going up and down out of tree stands. And in our classes, we're promoting, hey, make sure you get a fall arrest system, which includes a full safety harness and lines that you're clipping into as you're starting at the bottom of the tree and going all the way up. And then when you do get up into the tree, make sure that you're clipping in, because a lot of us, maybe we haven't done that for a long time and we think it won't happen. But when you're going hunting, there's a lot of downtime. And, sometimes you get a little sleepy or you get tired. So though you may not think it's going to happen to you, you never know. So, hey, be safe, strap your up in a tree, make sure you take your time as you're going up and down.
I think that's one of the key messages is even though we still have some hunting safety related instances, these are largely preventable situations. And so if people take the proper precautions, like Tim alluded to, we wouldn't have any. And so we launched a new campaign just last week called Strap Up Before You Go Up to try and address this issue with tree stands in particular and emphasize the importance of wearing a fall arrest system and always being attached from the time you start climbing to the time you get back down.
So in addition to obviously tree stand safety, hunter orange and hunter pink is important. Can you explain why we put in place those practices and how it works to help keep hunting safe in the state?
Yeah. So when you're out in the field, you got to be identifiable, and wearing hunter orange or pink makes you visible to other hunters or other people in the area, and that's super important. I would recommend to people who are just about hiking on trails or whatever, hey, wear that as well. I mean, you may not be hunting, but and generally hunters are going off in the woods, they have their places, but just so that you're visible, that's good. And then also, why are you going to wear hunter orange? Like, isn't it visible to us? Isn't it visible to deer? But no, they don't see that wavelength. So if you're wearing orange, deer are not picking up on that, but people are, and that is a huge, huge, huge point to being safe in the woods.
So if you're not taking notes, listeners, I would encourage you to visit the DEC website, dec.ny.gov, for all of these hunter safety tips.
Definitely. So how else are we attracting female and women hunters into the sport of hunting generally? I know there's a big uptick in that, and we have some programs focused on it, but what are the strategies we're using to expand out hunting in New York State?
I think the biggest one that I can mention is our Becoming an Outdoors Woman program. So we hold special trainings across the state where women can come and learn how to hunt, fish, trap, all of these things that historically women haven't really been involved or exposed to.
Or encouraged to do.
As men have. And so this is critical because if you look at our hunter demographics currently, we're looking at 50 to 60-year-old white males. And that is not what our state is becoming. So we need more women, more members from minority communities, more Native Americans and indigenous peoples involved in hunting moving forward. And so the more people that we can get involved in hunting that are young and that don't look like me, the better.
So why is hunting so important to our conservation work overall? Like, I think people think of hunting as being a negative impact on the environment, but actually it's quite the opposite. So explain why hunting is such an important tool.
So I think there's many reasons, but probably the most important one is from a conservation funding standpoint. So the majority of funding that is used for game and non-game species management, habitat acquisition, education and outreach, research, comes from hunting. And that's primarily from two sources. So when hunters purchase their hunting license, that revenue goes into the state conservation fund. This is a protected fund dedicated to wildlife species management. We then use that funding as match for Pittman-Robertson Act funding. This is federal funding that's generated from an excise tax on hunting and hunting-related equipment purchases. We have to contribute 25% match for that funding, and then we get an allocation from the federal government each year. That's about $18 million from the feds each year that we can use for conservation work in New York. And so from that standpoint, hunting in both regards, whether it be purchasing your hunting license or purchasing hunting equipment, contributes to conservation and millions of dollars of conservation funding in New York. There's also more subtle ways that hunting contributes to conservation. So, for example, an estimated 210,000 deer were harvested in New York last year. If you conservatively say each one of those deer produced 40 pounds of meat, we're talking about over 8 million pounds of meat that has been brought into our food system in New York State. And that's meat that is essentially sustainable, organic, healthy, low cost. And so all of these issues regarding, carbon footprint from industrial meat production, methane footprint from industrial meat production, you don't have to worry about if you're consuming venison, or not nearly as much. And so there's these other aspects of deer hunting and being able to generate a food source that has a much lower environmental footprint than other sources of protein that many people don't realize, and I wanted to emphasize. And then lastly, it either impacts or contributes to other conservation work. So for example, we have this 25 million tree initiative, right, coming up. Deer eat young trees. They will eat young trees down to pretty much nothing if given the chance. And in many areas of the state, we already have issues with forest regeneration. And so if we're going to achieve our goals of having our forest regenerate and help sequester carbon long-term, deer have to be part of the conversation in that. And managing deer has to be part of the conversation in that. So those are just some examples, but there's a variety of other ways that hunting contributes to conservation in New York.
I know hunting for food is really important for the people doing the hunting, but we also encourage folks to donate the deer they harvest. Can you tell me a little bit about that program?
Yeah. The Department of Health came out with a study just earlier this year that found that 1 in 4 adults in New York are food insecure. And depending on the county, that can range from like 12% of adults to over 40% of adults in a particular county are food insecure. And so venison donation is a critical component of addressing that challenge. And so each year we partner with an organization called Feeding New York State, and they receive funding from Department of Health and us to administer venison donation programs across the state. So they're essentially paying meat processors to take in deer from hunters and cover the processing costs so that deer can be donated and enter our food banks and be distributed to those in need. And each year they're processing about 50 to 70,000 pounds of venison that's going directly into our food systems and helping address food insecurity. The main issue right now is they are essentially spending out everything that they have available to process deer each year. And we know that there's more deer out there that could be donated, but we don't have funding to cover the processing costs right now and have them be donated. That's one of the things I'd love to see is expansion of that venison donation program in New York so that they have sufficient funding to really ramp up venison donation being a critical solution to food insecurity in New York.
Feeding New Yorkers in need.
Yeah, and just the other week we were celebrating an important milestone here in the state for that work with our 32 million pounds of food food that we've been able to donate instead of landfilling, which is a huge factor in climate change. We think of methane emissions from landfills, and obviously we're working really to address food insecurity overall, and this is one of the important tools to do it. But I'm going to take a step back, and when we think about inspiring the next generation of hunters and conservationists here in the state, what's the most memorable story from your hunter ed experience of where you've been out there and you really saw that spark happen, or, what has really been the best story you can tell?
Yeah, well, I can actually have two stories. One that's directly related to hunter education.
If I can get an extra DMAT permit, I'll long stories.
Okay, you gotcha. You bet. So one of the things that regional hunter education coordinators do is we provide new instructor trainings for new instructors. And when I start that, I tell the instructors who are coming up how much value you have to new people coming in, because what you say can affect them the rest of their life. And you have people that are coming in who are very interested in going to do it, but you also have a lot of other folks who are coming in with maybe their family or their cousins, and they're like coming along for the ride, but the information that you provide there could have a lasting effect and make them conservationists in the future. So your role is super important. And I tell them about a story of when I was a child. So at 11 years old, at 11, you could take your hunter education course. At 12, you could go hunting. I remember that super vividly. Even now in my 30s, I remember those times. I remember that day that I went there, the instructors teaching me, doing a blood trail, shooting a .22 with that rifle. I'll never forget that. I'll remember the kids that I took it with. So that had a lasting effect on me, and that is super important. And I lead that with our instructors so that they know the importance of that when they're offering these classes. And then as far as personally for me, my dad, he used to get us up in a tree stand or take us out hunting as early as we could. And it's kind of interesting because I have a 3-year-old boy, and I never really mentioned it or, pushing it on him, but he's already, hey, Dad, can I go hunting with you? And even if you don't go hunting with them, just to emulate it so you get them out in the woods and they have appreciation for nature. But when I was a young boy, my dad had me with him, and I'll never forget this. And this probably is what hooked me. And because when you go hunting, it's not always about what you're going to get or what you're going to take home or that big buck, but it's the experience. And I'll never forget this experience where I'm sitting up in a tree stand and there was a big buck that walked in. And my dad drew with his bow, and at the same time we had turkeys underneath us, and just seeing that animal. And my dad never got, a shot. We never brought that deer home, but just that experience, and then also that respect from my father to say, hey, this wasn't a good shot. It wasn't going to be a clean kill. And the overall experience is what sticks with me. And I'll never forget that. Being out there in the wild, hey, it wasn't all about what we're bringing home today, but that experience that I had with the other wildlife. And then going forward in the future, I've seen animals that most people never will, sitting up there in a tree stand or being out in the woods. And I hope that I and my job can shed that light on newcomers, new hunters, my family as we go on through history.
That's an incredible legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's, like I said, just like for me getting into this field, it was nature. It's like, grabbing frogs, doing that. And then to what Brandon was saying is like you're actively promoting this conservation and providing into it, providing information for biologists that they can use to better understand wildlife populations. Like everybody has a role in it. And it's a really great thing because our overall goal is that, hey, that my young kids, that they could see wildlife populations as they are now. And then their generation, they also get to see those same wildlife populations so we could sustain that in the future.
So Brendan, what is the outlook for this upcoming big game season in New York State, and where should I be planning to go myself?
Yeah, for deer, we're expecting a pretty productive year. So last year we had a bumper crop of acorns across the state. And so deer went into winter fat and happy, for lack of a better word. And, they had a lot of fawns this spring. So we're expecting a lot of opportunities for hunters to take antlerless deer does on landscape, and that's really what we want to see more so than harvesting bucks, because that's what supports our deer management objectives. You really have to manage the female members of the population in both deer and bear populations to achieve management goals. And so I would encourage every hunter to take advantage of harvesting a doe this fall. Interestingly, the number of older age class bucks being harvested by hunters in New York is continuing to increase, and that's largely in light of our Let Young Bucks Go and Watch Them Grow campaign. That campaign, we continue to see hunters being willing to pass up opportunities at smaller, younger bucks to have opportunities at older age class bucks, which produce more meat, which are have larger antlers typically, tend to be a little bit more exciting to hunt because they're more actively engaged in the breeding season. And so hunters will still have ample opportunities to harvest an older age class buck this fall as well. And then from the bear standpoint, it was an elevated year of human-bear conflict for us this summer, and so I do expect the bear harvest to be pretty strong as well.
So what are your favorite recipes?
And will you share them so we can add them to the podcast notes?
I would love to.
I have too many.
So it's very important to me that my family and that my wife enjoys eating venison. So I have and also my brother. So my brother loves the camaraderie, going out hunting, being in nature. But the venison doesn't really stick with him. So it's my goal in life that he enjoys venison. So one of the things that I've made that has been a huge favorite of my family is like a venison marsala. So I'll take any of the steaks, I'll pound it down really thin, and then cook it as you would any marsala, like bread it lightly with some flour, cooking in the mushrooms and onions, and it's it's the best.
Is it time for lunch?
Yeah, so my family has attempted to shift completely away from beef and pork to venison, kind of, trying to set an example of how this can be done. And you can really use venison or bear for that matter, burger for any replacement of beef. And so I use it in spaghetti sauce, I use it for tacos, I use it for meatloaf, meatballs. All those things are now venison in my diet. And so those are some of the recipes that I use more often. As far as my favorite, I think I just really enjoy a backstrap grilled steak. I marinate it or just use a rub of some kind, put that on the grill or on the smoker for a few hours, and doesn't get much better than that.
Definitely. Well, it gets better is my venison jerky and Erica's.
Oh my God, it's so good.
It's so tasty. Looking forward to getting out and successful.
That's the other thing I've been trying to stock up on is the supplies that I can, so that I can make all those different meat products. Yeah. So summer sausage, jerky, snack sticks. Because again, if you can find ways to utilize venison in your diet daily, I'm reducing my environmental footprint, and it's just good.
Well, maybe we should have a cooking show podcast video.
Oh, I like this idea.
Right?
So we have our first question from the audience.
Ding, ding, ding.
And it happens to be for you guys. You ready?
Ready.
Gina D. from Bloomfield, New York. Why are food plots allowed and not considered baiting? People certainly hunt, there's quotation marks around that, over them, and they cause deer to congregate, which could facilitate the transmission of diseases.
Yeah, so there's really two primary differences between baiting and food plotting. Baiting is really a concentrated area, whether it be a pile of corn or apples, bucket of carrots, whatever, that someone is intentionally putting out there to attract deer and shoot deer over, that can be replenished. Whereas a food plot, it's usually over a larger area. It's not like you're, have one localized area where you're planting some clover seed or, radishes, whatever it may be that's in a food plot mix. Usually planting it over a larger area that deer have access to. And once they feed on that, and once those plants have been browsed down, it's not like you can just go out and replenish it. You can't just go and grow more clover overnight as you would, if you just need to put out more corn on a bait pile. So those are the primary reasons why food plot production is a little bit different than baiting. And for those who aren't aware, baiting is illegal in New York for a number of reasons. One, because it's really not a fair chase approach to hunting, and two, it can promote the spread of disease. In particular, we're worried about chronic wasting disease coming into New York and spreading throughout our deer population. And when deer are in close proximity to each other and feeding off of the same concentrated food source, the prions that spread that disease can spread through the deer population much more readily.
And kudos to you and the team for keeping those diseases at bay here in New York State. It's really been a testament to the integrity of the program and our approach overall, and the safe and responsible hunters out there who are helping report this, making sure our deer are tested. And as they're on the front lines of this disease prevention, and chronic wasting disease is detrimental, and as we've seen in other states, but not here in New York, thanks to your efforts. So kudos to you.
Thanks.
And kudos to our listener for bringing in a question here. I was looking for the other questions that all my hunting buddies have sent me in, and I can't find them now. So we'll probably have to have you guys back on the show in the future. But if you do have questions for our hunter education folks, guys, how can folks get in touch with you?
Sure. So I work out of the Watertown office, and they by email or by phone, either way. We're public servants. We're here to answer your questions. So.
Yeah, same here. We have a general wildlife email that people can access on DEC's website, as well as a general wildlife phone number that people can call. And then if you have a regional topic that you need input or guidance on, definitely reach out to your regional office.
So start at dec.ny.gov. You can find out our hunter education folks and our deer management team, and send in all your questions, and they'll be here to answer them for you.
So let's talk about how you came to DEC. Brendan, you want to go first?
Sure. My story is a little bit more convoluted, I think. I always had a passion for nature and conservation. I grew up outdoors. My parents would bring me on walks in the woods, and I had a big wetland behind my house that I would go and catch frogs in, and do those types of things. And that's really where I knew I wanted to be in this field. And then I was introduced to hunting, turkey hunting first, when I was 12 years old by my uncle, and then deer hunting when I was 14 years old. And once I experienced that in particular, I knew that I wanted to be a wildlife biologist, a deer biologist in particular. And that's why I pursued a degree in wildlife management from SUNY Cobleskill. So I got my bachelor's degree there graduated in 2010. And then after that, I went to work for the Nature Conservancy for 10 years. I worked on invasive species management related issues up there for a decade for one of our partnerships for regional invasive species management. I was the terrestrial coordinator there for 5 years, and then the program director there for another 5 years. Really enjoyed it, had a great time, really had some conservation success that I'm proud of. But I also had this kind of passion for wildlife and deer management that I wanted to get back into. And so after that, I decided to pursue my master's degree at Cornell University. So I went there specifically to study deer management and deer impacts. Spent 3 years there, graduated in 2021. And then after that, the Region 3 deer biologist position opened up in New Paltz. Applied and got that, and was there for a little over a year. And then the central office statewide big game biologist position opened up, and I applied, and here I am.
Tim, what about you?
Yeah, as I'd mentioned before, my father had a real passion for outdoors, whether it be hunting or fishing, and that just kind of bred into me and also stuck with me because I think, maybe a lot of folks have parents or whatever that are interested in that, and they don't seem to carry it out. But my dad had a real passion just for all wildlife and the trees and the plants and all that stuff. And that stuck with me as a kid, similar to Brendan was mentioned, the frogs and whatever that you're finding out and about. We also had a stream in the back of our yard. So that just continued to grow. My interest in science continued to grow. And then when you get to that point in high school, you're like, what are you going to do? So I'm like, I don't want to sit behind a desk. Just kind of funny because as a biologist, you do a lot of sitting behind a desk. So I'm going to do wildlife management. There was no question. It was science, it was wildlife, it was outdoors. So I also pursued a degree at SUNY Cobleskill in wildlife management. After that, my first job actually was with consulting companies doing threatened and endangered species surveys. Went into lucky enough to get a job with the DEC as a wildlife technician for a few years. Left that and then bounced around. So in the wildlife field, all these technicians out there, that you're bouncing around all over the place to get experience. It's either bouncing around job 6 months here, 6 months there, 3 months here, or you eventually get lucky enough to get a new graduate position. For me, it was job after job. Kentucky University, worked in Alaska, worked with other consulting companies. Finally got a full-time job in Maryland with the Maryland DNR. I'm like, all right, for a kid that grew up in the country between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland was a little bit different, but it was a learning experience. And then I got the call for an opportunity to interview for a wildlife biologist job in Watertown, and that's the history. And here I am.
To Watertown.
Yeah, here I am. Let's go. So,
That's awesome.
yeah, and it's been great.
So one of the things that I focus on is reducing barriers to youth to get outdoors and involved in hunting. And so one of the ways we do that is provide these special youth hunting opportunities throughout the year. Just a few weeks ago, we had one for big game hunting where youth aged 12 to 15 could get out to experience big game hunting with an experienced adult mentor. And that's one way that we're encouraging the next cohort of hunters to get involved and really contribute to conservation in the future.
So this year we've had some changes happening in our hunting licensing program. I know we talked about 565,000 licensed hunters in New York State, and we've made a big change now. Brendan, can you explain what's happening, what people should expect when they buy their hunting and fishing license this year?
Yeah, there's two main changes that are happening this year. One is we're transitioning away from Valeron tags, these plastic tags that we've historically provided, to paper tags. And you no longer need to wear a back tag in the southern zone. And so this is really paving the way to a more modernized license purchasing process. Eventually, we're going to be transitioning to a completely digital licensing process. And so this is one way that we can reduce DEC's environmental footprint by not printing things on plastic anymore. It's provided consistency across the state because we didn't have to wear back tags in the northern zone up until this year already. So it just provides some consistency in our regulations. And again, it's paving the way for the eventual electronic tagging.
So if folks are interested in Hunt Fish New York classes, or also the mentored hunts that Brendan was talking about, the New York State DEC website, there's a Learn to Hunt page where you can find a link that lists all of these events across the state. And in addition to new hunters, it also is, there's going to be potential for honing in skills for folks that have been afield for a while, but just maybe want to hone in and hunting, another particular species like duck or deer or bear. So it really should provide benefit for all New Yorkers.
We should get you take some of those classes, Erica, for sure.
Just to say, so my son took the hunter ed class last spring.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time you spend with teenagers lately, but they are a tough bunch.
Well,
And I have to say, his praise for hunter ed from start to finish, he had nothing but he was just blown away. It was a really valuable experience for him that he led, and I think really set him up for future success.
Yeah, and that's what you two are doing, and the programs and teams behind you. It's really great to watch you inspire the next generation of hunters and anglers here in the state.
And help them find opportunities to put their phones down, get offline, get outside.
Yeah, I believe that's the mantra, right? Get
Yes.
offline and get outside. And what better way to do that than hunting this season? So we'll let you guys get back to it, engaging our hunters out in the field, educating them, and Brendan making sure we're managing the populations out there properly. Great to hear the science of this, and thanks you two for being on the show. And hopefully do that cooking episode soon, and I'll also bring you down to New Turkey if I'm successful this year too. But
Sounds good.
thanks for being on YouTube.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Erica, I am so hungry after that conversation now. I can't wait to get out.
Is
in
it
the field
lunchtime?
myself. Must be, or just excitement for the great hunting opportunities in New York and for us to get out there and get a field. And it was fun to hear from Brendan and Tim on all the ways that we're trying to connect New Yorkers to nature and these opportunities, and also all the yummy recipes that are going to be in the show notes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to see what you come up with, too.
Oh, I just want some of your venison jerky.
Coming right up if I'm successful.
All right, so I wish you well in
Thank
your
you for
endeavors
that.
afield.
Exactly. So when we're not afield, Erica, we got a lot of the news in the news here with the Team DEC, but what else is going on?
Well, first, since we are amid the hunting seasons, I just wanted to remind folks who are spending time outdoors to be mindful of other people spending time outdoors. So if you're hunting and you see a hiker, or if you're hiking and you see a hunter, just make yourselves known to each other. We really encourage everyone who's getting outside to wear hunter pink or hunter orange. blaze orange rather, to make sure that they can see and be seen and respect each other while they're in the outdoors.
And we are having some beautiful fall weather here in New York State. It's a great time to get offline and get outside and
Right,
really
but
enjoy.
always safety first.
Exactly, always. So speaking of safety first, when it comes to roadway safety, I know we've got some, action that we've been undertaking on road salt and trying to get people to reduce the amount of road salt we're putting on the environment, right?
We do. Rock salt on roads can impact water quality. So we are trying to get a sense of New Yorkers' perceptions about the use of rock salt, how they're using it, where they're using it, when they're using it. We have a survey on rock salt usage that is closing on November 1st. So visit the DEC website and check that out and share your thoughts.
Yeah, so don't be salty, New York, and take that survey to give us your feedback on road salt usage and the ways that we can help reduce it in the environment, because it is so important.
Absolutely.
So what's also important, Erica, I think we have an important reminder to homeowners, especially in upstate this time of year. What's that?
As winter is upon us, every year we encourage homeowners and landlords too to prioritize home heating safety before winter by inspecting their fuel tanks. You want to make sure that you're preventing any potential spills or leaks that could endanger your family's health or your tenant's health. So we have some easy tips encouraging folks to do that. Also, check out all that and more on the DEC website.
That's dec.ny.gov, and we appreciate you all tuning in to another episode of DEC Does What. Exciting conversation on hunting today, and we've got some other awesome episodes coming up in the future. But
yes, we do.
You can always email us at contact@dec.ny.gov. Let us know more of what you want to hear about, but most importantly, Erica, what should all New Yorkers do?
Put on some blaze orange or hunter pink and get outside.
DEC Does What is a production of DEC's Division of Communication, Education, and Engagement. Our theme music is an original composition by Mike Menza, wildlife technician with DEC's Division of Fish and Wildlife. Like what you heard on this episode? Please leave a review and share this episode with others. Want to learn more about DEC's wide-ranging efforts to protect New Yorkers and the environment? Visit dec.ny.gov or connect with us on social media. You can find us using @NYSDEC. For more information on DEC Does What, visit dec.ny.gov/podcast.